Sweetheart, if you're looking for the commissary, you took a wrong turn about 3 miles back. The family support center is near the main gate. This area is for authorized personnel only. The voice dripped with that specific kind of condescension that usually accompanies a clipboard and a stripe or two of unearned authority. Lisa McDonald didn't flinch. She didn't even turn around immediately. She stood with her feet shoulder-width apart, staring at the undercarriage of a massive light-medium tactical vehicle, or LMTV, that was hoisted up on the heavy-duty jacks in Bay 4. The air in the Motorpool was thick with the smell of diesel, hydraulic fluid, and the acrid scent of grinding metal, a perfume she had worn for the better part of 2 decades. She was wearing a royal blue blouse that fell softly against her frame, contrasting sharply with the grease-stained concrete and the olive-drab uniformity of the soldiers bustling around her. Her long blonde hair was loose, cascading down her back, catching the harsh fluorescent lights of the maintenance bay. To the casual observer, specifically the young corporal currently sneering at her back, she looked like a civilian who had wandered off the beaten path, a lost spouse perhaps, or a contractor's wife looking for her husband. Lisa turned slowly. Her expression was mild, her blue eyes calm, but there was a stillness to her posture that should have been a warning. "I am not looking for the commissary, Corporal," she said, her voice even, cutting through the din of impact wrenches and shouting mechanics. "I'm looking for the maintenance control officer. I was told the dispatch records for the Bravo Company logistics fleet were being audited today." The corporal, a young man named Miller with a high and tight haircut that looked fresh from the barber, and a uniform that was just a little too clean for a Motorpool at 1400 hours, laughed. It was a sharp barking sound that drew the attention of 3 other soldiers nearby. They stopped their work, wiping grease-stained hands on rags, sensing entertainment. "An audit?" Miller smirked, stepping closer, invading her personal space just enough to be aggressive without technically breaking regulation. "Listen, ma'am, I don't know who sent you down here, but we don't let civilians wander around the bays, especially not dressed like that. You're a safety hazard. Loose hair, nice clothes. You're going to get snagged on a drive shaft or slip on a drip pan. Why don't you go wait in the parking lot and I'll have someone come find your husband?" Lisa held her ground. She shifted her weight, and for a split second the muscle memory of a different life flared. The instinct to square up, to use the knife hand, to project the voice that could cut through a sandstorm, but she suppressed it. She was here as a technical consultant for the battalion's logistics overhaul, a civilian role she had taken after hanging up the uniform. She needed to see if the maintenance standards were being upheld, not get into a shouting match with a 22-year-old who thought he owned the asphalt. "My clothing is not the issue, Corporal Miller," she said, reading the name tape on his chest. "And neither is my hair. The issue is that LMTV behind you. The front differential is leaking. I can smell the gear oil from here. If you dispatch that vehicle for the convoy training tonight, you're going to seize the axle before you hit the main road." Miller's face flushed a blotchy red. He looked back at the truck, then back at Lisa, his ego bristling. He turned to his buddies, looking for validation. "Did you hear that? The lady thinks she smells gear oil." Miller rolled his eyes, performing for his audience. "Ma'am, that's just the smell of a Motorpool. It's man's work. It's dirty. I suggest you go back to the office where it smells like potpourri and let us handle the equipment. You're not authorized to be on this floor. Now, I'm going to have to ask you to leave before I call the MPs to escort you." He pointed toward the bay doors, a gesture of dismissal so arrogant it made Lisa's jaw tighten. She looked at the truck again. She didn't just smell the oil. She saw the dark sheen on the inner rim of the tire. She knew that specific viscosity, that particular failure point. She knew it because she had changed a differential on the side of a highway in Ramadi while tracers snapped over her head like angry hornets. She knew it because she had kept trucks running when they had more shrapnel in them than steel. "I'm not leaving until I speak to the warrant officer in charge," Lisa stated, her voice dropping an octave, losing the politeness. "And if you dispatch that truck, you are violating safety regulation AR 751. That is a deadline fault." Miller stepped in front of her, effectively blocking her view of the vehicle. He crossed his arms. The other soldiers chuckled, murmuring comments about Barbie playing mechanic and someone come get their wife. Miller leaned in, his voice low and threatening. "Look, lady, I'm the shop foreman today. Chief is in a meeting. I say the truck is fine. I signed the inspection. You challenging my signature. You think because you read a manual once you know what we do. You have no idea what it takes to keep these beasts moving. You have no idea what it's like to rely on this steel to keep you alive. So do yourself a favor. Turn around, walk out that door, and don't come back until you have an escort who knows a wrench from a curling iron." The disrespect hung in the humid air, heavy and suffocating. Lisa stared at him, her eyes narrowing. The insult wasn't just about her gender, it was an insult to the profession. It was a violation of the sacred trust between the operator and the mechanic, a bond she had bled for. For a moment the sound of the workshop faded. The clatter of tools and the roar of engines blurred into a low hum. Whump. The sound echoed in the back of her mind, a dull, concussive thud that rattled the teeth. The smell of the Motorpool vanished, replaced instantly by the scent of burning rubber and cordite. The heat wasn't from the humid garage anymore. It was the dry, searing furnace of the Iraqi desert. She was gripping a steering wheel so hard her knuckles were white, the cab of the truck filled with smoke, the radio screaming coordinates. The windshield was a spiderweb of cracks. Beside her, the gunner's boots were dangling into the cab, swinging wildly as the turret traversed. "Keep moving," a voice screamed in her head. "If you stop, you die." Lisa blinked, the memory receding as quickly as it had come, leaving her heart hammering a slow, steady rhythm against her ribs. She was back in the garage. Corporal Miller was still smirking at her. She didn't shout. She didn't argue. She simply stepped around him. "Hey," Miller shouted, reaching out to grab her arm. "Where do you think you're going?" Lisa moved with a fluidity that belied her relaxed appearance. She sidestepped his grasp and walked straight to the front of the LMTV. She didn't care about the grease on the floor. She dropped to one knee, ignoring the risk to her white trousers, and reached under the chassis. She ran her finger along the seal of the differential housing and pulled it back. It came away coated in thick black sludge mixed with metallic flakes. She stood up, grabbed a clean rag from a nearby workbench, and wiped her finger, holding the rag up for Miller to see. The silver shavings glinted in the light. "Metal shavings," Lisa said, her voice piercing the noise of the shop. "Internal bearing failure. If this truck moves, the wheel locks. If the wheel locks at 40 miles per hour with a load of ammo in the back, this truck rolls, and whoever is driving it dies." She tossed the rag onto the workbench. It landed with a soft slap. Miller stared at the rag, then at her. His face contorted not with shame but with anger at being shown up. He felt his authority slipping, his audience watching him be corrected by a civilian woman in a blouse. "You touched government property," he snarled, stepping toward her aggressively. "That's unauthorized tampering. I don't care what you found. You are violating security protocols." He signaled to two of the other soldiers who stepped forward, forming a semicircle around her. The atmosphere shifted from unprofessional to menacing. They were closing ranks, the tribe protecting its own against the outsider. "Get her out of here," Miller ordered. "Escort her to the gate. If she resists, detain her." Lisa didn't back down. She reached up to adjust her hair, feeling the heat rising on the back of her neck. The royal blue top was loose, and as she raised her arms to tie her hair back into a severe knot, preparing for a fight she hadn't started but was willing to finish, the fabric shifted. The wide neckline of the blouse slipped down her shoulder and dipped low across her upper back. "Wait," one of the older mechanics said. He was a staff sergeant passing by with a crate of parts. He stopped dead in his tracks, his eyes fixed on Lisa's back. "Miller, hold up," the staff sergeant said, dropping the crate with a heavy clatter. "What?" Miller snapped, keeping his eyes on Lisa. "She's trespassing, Sergeant." Lisa finished tying her hair. She kept her back turned for a second longer as she inspected the tire tread, unaware that the shirt had gathered in a way that revealed the skin between her shoulder blades. There, etched into her skin in dark, indelible ink, was a tattoo. It wasn't a butterfly or a flower. It was a complex, aggressive design in black and gray. It depicted the front grille of a heavily armored M915 line haul truck, the gun truck configuration with improvised steel plating welded over the doors. Above the truck a banner read "Road to Baghdad," and below it a list of dates and a single phrase in Latin, "More subalto, death from above." But what caught the staff sergeant's eye wasn't the truck. It was the specific unit crest integrated into the design, a skull wearing a sustainment brigade patch, crossed with two M2.50 caliber machine guns. And running down her spine intertwined with the design were 4 names. The staff sergeant knew what that ink meant. He had seen it in history books about the Logistics Corps. He had heard the stories in the NCO club about the Iron Run of 2004. "Miller, step back," the staff sergeant ordered, his voice tight. Miller looked confused. "Sarge, I said step back." The staff sergeant barked. "Someone get the commander. Now." "Why?" Miller asked, his bravado wavering. "Because if that tattoo is real," the staff sergeant said, lowering his voice, looking at Lisa with a mixture of awe and fear, "you are about to be in a world of hurt that paperwork can't fix." Lisa turned around, adjusting her shirt covering the ink. She saw the look on the staff sergeant's face. She recognized the recognition. "Is there a problem?" she asked calmly, The staff sergeant shook his head slowly. "No, ma'am. No problem. I'm calling the CO." Miller scoffed. "For her. The old man is going to chew you out for wasting his time. She's just a dependent with an attitude." The staff sergeant pulled out his phone, ignoring Miller. He dialed a number, his eyes never leaving Lisa. "Sir, this is Staff Sergeant Davis in the Motorpool." "Yes, sir. I know you're in a briefing." "Sir, you need to come down here. We have a situation." "No, not a spill. It's a woman. Blonde, blue shirt." "Sir, she has the gun truck marking. The Route Tampa Reaper." "Yes, the one with the 4 names." There was a silence on the other end of the line, palpable even through the cell connection. Then, a curt reply that made Davis straighten up. "He's coming," Davis said, hanging up. "And he's bringing the battalion sergeant major." Miller looked nervous now. The commander, Lieutenant Colonel Vance, was known as a hard charger, a man who didn't tolerate foolishness. If he was coming down personally, something was wrong. But Miller couldn't let go of his pride. He doubled down. "Great," Miller muttered. "When the colonel gets here, he can arrest her himself for impersonating an inspector." Lisa walked over to the workbench and picked up a rag to wipe a spot of grease from her hand. She leaned against the heavy steel table, crossing her ankles. She looked at Miller with a gaze that was almost pitying. "You should check the transmission fluid on that LMTV while you wait, Corporal," she suggested softly. It looked low, too. Miller practically vibrated with rage. "Stop telling me how to do my job." The sound of engines cut him off. Not the rumble of trucks, but the high-pitched whine of HMMWVs approaching at speed. Through the open bay doors, tires crunched on gravel. Doors slammed. A group of officers and senior NCOs marched into the bay. The sunlight silhouetted them, creating a wall of authority. In the lead was Lieutenant Colonel Vance, a man with graying temples and a chest full of ribbons. Flanking him was the battalion sergeant major and the company commander. Miller snapped to attention, saluting sharply. The other soldiers followed suit. "Group, attention," Miller shouted. Lisa stood up straight, but she didn't salute. She wasn't in uniform. She simply uncrossed her arms and waited. Lieutenant Colonel Vance walked right past Miller, ignoring the salute. He marched straight up to Lisa, his eyes wide, scanning her face. He stopped 3 feet from her. The entire bay fell silent. The only sound was the distant hum of a generator. Vance looked at her, then his eyes flicked to the collar of her royal blue blouse. "Turn around," Vance said. It wasn't an order. It was a breathless request. "Please." Lisa held his gaze for a moment, then slowly turned her back to him. She reached up and pulled her hair to the side again, leaning slightly forward so the fabric of her shirt dipped. The tattoo was revealed in the stark fluorescent light. The gun truck, the dates, the names. Vance stared at it, his breath hitched. He took a step closer, reading the names inked into her skin. SGT Ramirez, SPC Talley, PFC Cohen, LT Briggs. He froze. His hand came up, hovering inches from her shoulder as if he wanted to touch the ink to verify it was real, but he pulled back, respecting the boundary. "Holy smoke," the sergeant major whispered behind him. "It's the ghost." Vance stepped back as Lisa turned around to face him. The colonel's face, usually a mask of stoic command, was broken open with emotion. He looked at Lisa, really looked at her, seeing past the civilian clothes, past the blonde hair. "Lisa McDonald?" Vance asked, his voice cracking slightly. "Chief Warrant Officer McDonald?" "Retired," Lisa corrected gently. "Just Lisa now, Colonel." Vance swallowed hard. He looked at Miller, who was standing there with his mouth slightly open, confused and terrified. Then Vance looked back at Lisa. "I was a lieutenant in the 1st Cav, Vance said softly. "Fallujah, November 2004. We were pinned down at the Cloverleaf. We had been out of ammo for 30 minutes. They were coming over the walls. We called for resupply, but brigade said the route was black. They said no one could get through." Lisa nodded slowly. "I remember. The radio traffic was intense." Vance continued, speaking to the room now, his voice rising so every soldier in the bay could hear. "Brigade said it was suicide, but then a single convoy of 3 gun trucks volunteered to go. They ran a gauntlet of 4 miles of IEDs and RPG fire. The lead truck took 3 hits and kept moving. The driver of that lead truck," Vance pointed a shaking finger at Lisa. "The driver of that lead truck maneuvered a burning vehicle through a blockade, rammed a VBIED off the road and delivered 4 pallets of ammunition and medical supplies to my platoon." He looked at Miller. "That woman saved my life. She saved the lives of 40 men that day, and she did it while her truck was on fire." The silence in the motor pool was absolute. Miller looked at Lisa, his face draining of color until he looked like a sheet of paper. He looked at the royal blue top, at the hands he had mocked for being too manicured. Lisa, Vance said, regaining his composure but his voice still thick with reverence. I heard you were consulting. I didn't know you were here. In my bay. I was sent to audit the fleet, Lisa said, her voice professional again, giving the colonel an out to return to business. But I seem to have run into some resistance regarding my access credentials and my attire. Vance turned slowly to face Miller. The transition from awestruck survivor to furious commander was instantaneous. His eyes narrowed into slits. Miller, Vance said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Did you impede this woman? Sir, I didn't know, Miller stammered. She wasn't in uniform. She looked like a spouse. I was just following security protocols. Security protocols, Vance barked, stepping into Miller's face. Did you ask for her ID? Did you check her contractor badge? Or did you take one look at a woman in a nice shirt and decide she didn't belong in your clubhouse? This woman, Vance gestured to Lisa, is a recipient of the Distinguished Service Cross. She is one of the most decorated 88 mics in the history of the Transportation Corps. She has forgotten more about the internal combustion engine and combat logistics than you will ever learn. And you tried to kick her out. Sir, she was touching the trucks. She was saving you from a Class A accident. Lisa interjected smoothly. The front differential on that LMTV is destroyed, Colonel. Corporal Miller was about to dispatch it. Vance looked at the truck, then back at Miller. Dispatching a deadline vehicle is a relief for cause offense, Corporal. Disrespecting a civilian consultant is an administrative action. But disrespecting a veteran of her caliber, that is a failure of character. Vance turned to the Sergeant Major. Sergeant Major, pull Corporal Miller's packet. He is relieved of duty as shop foreman effective immediately. He will report to the wash rack for the next 30 days, and schedule a battalion-wide EO and history brief. I want every soldier in this command to know who paved the roads they drive on. Yes, sir, the Sergeant Major growled. Vance turned back to Lisa. He stood tall, and in front of his entire command, he rendered a slow, crisp hand salute. It was a breach of protocol to salute a civilian, but nobody dared point it out. It was a salute from a survivor to his savior. Lisa smiled, a small, sad smile. She nodded her head in return. Thank you, Colonel, but I really just need to finish this inspection so I can go home. Of course, Vance said. He gestured to the bay. The floor is yours, Chief. Vance glared at the remaining soldiers. Anyone who doesn't give her exactly what she needs will answer to me. As the command team moved to the side, giving her space, Lisa walked back to the workbench. She picked up the rag she had tossed earlier. She turned to Miller, who was standing dejected, stripping off his shop foreman badge. Miller looked up at her, expecting her to gloat, to rub it in. Lisa held out the rag. Corporal, she said quietly. Miller hesitated. Yes, ma'am. Don't apologize to me for being rude, she said. I've been called worse things by better men. But never ever let your ego get in the way of the maintenance standards. That truck doesn't know who is driving it. It doesn't care if you're a man or a woman. It only cares if you tighten the bolts. She pointed to the LMTV. That leak didn't happen overnight. You missed it during the PMCS because you were rushing. Standards aren't there to annoy you. They are there because people die when we ignore them. Those names on my back. She paused, and for a second the flash came back. The heat, the scream of metal, the weight of the bodies she had pulled from the wreckage. The truck flipped, the dust settled. The silence was worse than the noise. She was dragging Ramirez, his legs pinned. Tally was gone. The smell of fuel. She blinked the memory away. Those names are the crew of the truck behind me. They died because a tie rod snapped at 50 miles an hour. It was a maintenance failure. Miller looked at her, his eyes wide with horror and realization. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the crushing weight of understanding. I didn't know, he whispered. Now you do, Lisa said firmly. Get a drip pan, drain the diff. We're going to inspect the gears together, and you're going to learn how to spot the metal shavings before you stick your finger in it. She tossed him the wrench. Miller caught it. He looked at the colonel, who gave him a curt nod, a silent order to listen and learn. Yes, Chief, Miller said, his voice respectful for the first time. Lisa MacDonald tied her hair a little tighter, smoothed her royal blue top, and stepped back into the grease and the grime. She wasn't just a consultant, and she wasn't just a veteran. She was a teacher, and class was in session. The Motorpool went back to work, but the tone had changed. The jeers were gone. The eyes that followed her now weren't filled with mockery, but with the quiet, heavy respect reserved for those who have walked through the fire and come back to show others the way. As she leaned over the fender, guiding Miller's hands to the bolt, The tattoo on her back was covered by the blue fabric, but its weight was felt by everyone in the room. If you enjoyed this story of hidden valor and vindication, please like, share, and subscribe to She Chose Valor. Help us honor the women who served, the sacrifices they made, and the legends they became.